Give that sister another well-deserved round of applause. Now, she spoke to us from a very high place. I'm going to talk about something that is an ultimate necessity to the female. Women need to be made secure. So I'm going to talk to you this afternoon about the plight of housing as it relates to the women. Did a little research on the state of women in America. It is a 50-state analysis of how women are faring across this country. Factors that were examined were economic security, legislative facts as to what women are doing in the political world in terms of Congress or women that are elected officials. Health factors were looked at, the overall percentage of women that are uninsured, and more than 22% of women are in poverty in Louisiana, compared to 11% in the state of Maryland. These are a couple of quick facts about Delaware, because that's where we are today. 51.6% are women in the state of Delaware. 71 out of that 51.6% are white. And 22.1% are black. And 8.7% are Latino or others. In 1986, when homelessness was just emerging as a national issue, didn't drive out of no place, that the University of Delaware Center for Common Research and Service conducted their first statewide data collection and analysis project to determine the size and nature of the homelessness problem in the first state. That effort sparked the first statewide conference on homelessness held at the University of Delaware in March of 1988. Some of the data showed that the rent burden on households in the year 2000 was more than 30% of your annual income, and in some cases, over 50%. I am a woman who had the opportunity to be raised by a mother who is still alive, who I love immensely. And she had 5 of us that she was working, cleaning people's houses for $8 a day. Sneaking out to do that. I was the oldest daughter and the oldest child, so I had to help her with my other siblings. As she went out from that public housing site into the city of Chester, Pennsylvania, called Moulton Village, I left her home at 18 years old, and I left the city of Chester in 75. And I was away a while, and I came back in 1989 to some of the most deplorable conditions that persons trying to live in public housing are experiencing, not only in the city of Chester, but all over this country. I suffered an aneurysm during that visit. I had 9 hours brain surgery. I'm blessed, I'm alive to talk about it and bear witness today. And I had to be back in Chester. So I said, well, since I'm back here, something will have to change around here. So we had the wonderful opportunity, myself and several other women who were trying to survive in those deplorable conditions that public housing had become in the late 80s. And we fought the first historic de facto demolition case in this country on behalf of poor people, women, and those who were living in government-subsidized housing throughout this country, but that housing had now become de facto demolished, meaning the conditions were so bad that you might as well have torn it down. One of my sisters is here in the audience today that used to work with the legal aid company in the city of Chester during that time, so she knows of this particular history. The fight was huge. The factors in it were humane. The case is called Velez versus, at that time, the Secretary of HUD was Secretary Cisneros. And every Secretary of HUD since. The Velez family was living in a condition where mice were biting on her children. We stormed the HUD office in Philadelphia, took it over. We took over the Chester Housing Authority, the city government, and we took all of them to court. The city, the housing authority, and the federal government. Because the federal government was killed. To that end, we won our case in the federal court under a very gracious woman that I really adore this woman. Her name is Judge Norma L. Shapiro. She came to our public housing sites. She walked them. She looked at the conditions that those women were trying to live in. I mean, she left there sick. But she heard our plea, and she ruled in our favor. That had never happened for poor women, public housing, and low-income families in this country. So today, the report is all of the public housing in the city of Chester got redone. All of the former conditions have been remedied. But you never just build bricks and mortar for families. That's the easy part. We worked very hard to rebuild the lives of those women, children, and the next generation that would potentially live that existence. When we look at the studies that affect our communities, family, come on, this is from my heart to your heart. You got a daughter, you know she's getting ready to be 18. You got to start looking at what am I going to attempt to facilitate for her or my 18-year-old son so that this doesn't become a generational cycle of poverty. And that's what we've been suppressed and oppressed in this country to do. You teach literally your next generation how to do the same thing you did. So when I looked at that, I said, no. We're going to do something a little different. So if you don't mind this afternoon, I'd like to share with you, the place used to be called Lamoken Village. It was the first public housing site built in the city of Chester in 1940 because Franklin D. Roosevelt was the president of the United States at that time. His wife, Eleanor, they were traveling through Chester going to Philadelphia. And she saw that the black people were living in a shanty town. And so she convinced her husband, Franklin, we need to do something for these poor Negroes that are living in these shanty towns. So the first public housing site built in the city of Chester was actually Lamoken Village. So in 1994, The Chester Housing Authority was on the troubled list with a score of 34. That August, the federal court judge, Norma Shapiro, appointed a receiver to oversee the CHA operations. 74% of the residents living at Lamoken Village, where I grew up with my mom, were in poverty compared to 24% and 7% currently citywide and 7% in the whole county. Okay? You got 74% of the people concentrated into poverty in this one area. So we move on to suing, winning, and receiving in 1996 a what they call Hope 6 grant. So we got awarded $14.9 million. To the end of that time, we did these activities. We got resident participation during the planning and implementation. You've got right now gentrification going on all over this country because none of us are at the table. You got to be there when they're talking about it, you got to be there when they're planning it, and you got to monitor how the dollars get spent. Provided appropriate levels of mixed income. Well, they said they were going to try to make it more self-sufficient because we're going to put some higher income folks in here with the lower income people. You know what they don't do in the middle? They don't make us have relationships. So you live next to somebody, you getting subsidized your housing rent. They working, they don't like you, they counting. You know, they counting your money. They saying, wait a minute, we got these poor folks, they tearing down our community. This is supposed to be a mix-up. We want them out of here. And eventually it opened the gate for privatization of public entities. So now you have all this private management going on in public housing. Fast forwarding, we built the new houses. We built the education center, we built the senior village, and we built some home ownership units. And like I told you before about the 70-something% of poverty. Now here's what, for me, was the best part. The median income among the residents at that time was $8,023 a month. Not a month, excuse me, a year. And the average monthly rent was about $175. Only 16% of the residents even had any earned income at all. Approximately 37% of the units was vacant. Crime, drugs, prostitution. I ain't gonna lie, I was letting them sisters come into my house and hang out because I didn't want to beat up for $2 for crack cocaine, okay? So, what we did with the 14-point-some-odd dollars was, even though we built the building, we spent a lot of that money on the people. So I managed literally the demolition. So I hired the young men in my community. They became supervisors. They was operating engineers. They were doing all kinds of work projects on the site that they grew up in. We put together a nonprofit business and incorporated it called Lamoken Prep. The laborers union got involved, and the capacity for us to do things became broadened because the young men and women had bigger and better technical skills to provide services back to themselves. So as a result of this venture, the demolition of the former Lamoken Village involved the employment of 38 of its residents, and the average earning per hour was $26.80. I think the time is getting well spent. But I wanted to just talk about it from this perspective a little bit to show that watch yourselves as it relates to your community. Go to your city council meetings and see what's on their agendas. And as you live, wherever you live, make sure that you have a voice in how you as neighbors are going to be treated, and then bring solution to yourself to echo one of the things that you shared, the law of religion can be placed on two principles. Love thy neighbor as thyself, and do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Thank you.